Hi guys, welcome back to Studying Smarter. My name is Emily and today I'm going to be sharing my top 10 classics I want to read in 2020 video list. I don't know. I was inspired by Lucy the Reader to make a video like this, but it's been my own personal goal to try to read more classics. I read, I think, like 8 classics last year, and I don't know, I really liked all of the classics that I read, but then I also felt like a lot of the books that I read that weren't classics were just like okay, if that makes sense. Like, I really want to try to read things with more substance, basically. And so I've compiled a list of classics that I want to read. These are in no particular order. They're just ones that have been on my list that I'm gonna force myself, I'm gonna tackle them, I'm gonna overcome my fear of some classics. I don't know about you, but sometimes I just feel like I'm not smart enough to read classics, if that makes sense. Like, I'll pick one up and I'll be like, oh, it sounds interesting, and then the more I think about it, the more that I like psych myself out about them. Oh no, me, I can't do that. So we're not doing that this year. This is 2020 Emily. 2020 Emily is going to read the classics that have been on her shelves for so long. So the first classic I have to show you is very embarrassing. One of the classics I want to read in 2020 is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Brontë. I've never read Jane Eyre. I haven't. I read Wuthering Heights last March. I read The Tenant of Wildfeld Hall and Agnes Grey this October. I've never read anything by Charlotte Brontë, which is embarrassing, and I need to remedy that. I think I've been putting off reading this book for so long just because it seems like it's everybody's favorite in the entire world, you know? And I'm scared it's not gonna live up to the hype, and I really want it to. I actually started it earlier this year, and I think I got to the end of volume 1, and I really liked it, but for one reason or another, I just didn't pick it up again. And I need to. I'm embarrassed that I haven't read this book, and I think I'm gonna enjoy it a lot, so I don't know why I'm not picking it up. This video is just gonna be me not understanding why I haven't read these books already when I really want to for like 7 minutes straight. The next classic I really want to pick up is Maurice by E.M. Forster. This book I actually found out from Lucy the Reader's video, but it seems so interesting. So it wasn't actually published until 1971, even though it was finished in 1914 and revised in the 1930s, because the main character, while conventional in almost every way in Edwardian society, he went to Cambridge, he went to private, what in America we call a private school, which is public school. He's completely normal. He goes into business, except he's gay in Edwardian London, and I think that's so interesting, and I'm so excited to read about this character and what he thinks and how he deals with this part of himself, and how I'm really intrigued by the idea. Another classic I want to read this year is by Emily Zola, and pronouncing this is going to be such a pain, but I'm gonna give it my best shot. L'Insomnie? I don't know. I feel like French, you never pronounce the R at the end. Is that right? Is that wrong? I don't study French, so I wouldn't know. I started this book a long time ago in high school, so that was like 4 years ago, and I really liked it, but I never finished it for some reason. Again, this is just gonna be me like having started all of these books and like not finished them for some reason. 2020 Emily is finally finishing the book she started reading in 2015. This is one of Zola's series books where it's like interconnected lives in 19th century working class Paris. This one is about Gervais, who starts her own laundry business, she gets married, and it's about her trying to find love and happiness in working class Paris in the 19th century. It deals a lot with, you know, alcohol abuse, domestic violence, those type of heavy issues. So one of my goals for this year in terms of my classics reading is I want to keep my classics diverse. Like, I want a diverse selection of classics. I want male authors, I want female authors, I want 20th century, I want 19th century, I want European, I want American, I want Russian. I want more diversity in what I've been reading, because typically my classic selection has been very limited to England. Typically Victorian England, but also Regency England, because Jane Austen. I need tea. So part of that is trying to incorporate those diverse geographic locations specifically into my readings. So I already have a French novel that I want to pick up. I already have an Edwardian, a book that's set in Edwardian London that was technically written in Edwardian England, even though it wasn't published until much later. But my next book is definitely different from what I normally read because it's Russian, and I really haven't read much Russian literature at all. I read half of The Idiot by Dostoevsky over the summer, and it was good, but I think I had a bad translation, which is really difficult for Russian, and so I want to try to pick that up but get a different translation of it because I just wasn't enjoying it. Just like, it felt so stilted, and I want to know if that's the author or if it's the translator that's making it feel that way. But this book is Oblomov by Ivan Goncharov. I don't think I'm pronouncing that right. I took Russian, I still can't pronounce anything. This book actually is a 19th century satire of the Russian aristocracy and intelligentsia. So the main character, whose name is actually Oblomov, is a young aristocrat who is just so lazy. He conducts all of his business from his bed, apparently in the first 50 pages. He moves from his bed to a chair. And that's what happens in the first 50 pages. He can't make any decisions. He can't do any meaningful acts. And it's just a big comment on the changing society of Russia in the 19th century and the slothful attitude of the aristocracy. And I think that's such an interesting concept, especially as someone like me who's a history major, obviously very interested in history. But to go back and see how this book specifically acted as a social commentary to Russia in that context, I think is going to be super interesting. So I talked about this next classic in my book haul. I'll link that video below, but it is House of Mirth by Edith Wharton. Again, one of my goals, I want to read more American fiction as well. I read Little Women at the very end of 2019. It was actually my last read of 2019, and what a way to go out. I loved that book so much. I had no spoilers for that book too, which with a classic, unheard of. I had no idea what was gonna happen the entire time. And it was published in the 19th century. But I want to read more American fiction, and Edith Wharton, I've heard only good things about her. I know Age of Innocence is her biggest novel, and that's another one that I want to read. So this is kind of a 2-in-1 for Edith Wharton. I want to read House of Mirth, and I also want to read Age of Innocence. I'm really interested to see her perspective on early 20th century New York life and American fiction in the 20th century. Another classic that I also talked about in my book haul, and that is Night and Day by Virginia Woolf. This book is really high on my list. I actually wasn't intending to read it, so I really like Virginia Woolf. I read Mrs. Dalloway when I was in high school, and I really enjoyed it, but I hadn't read any more of her, so when I was at Barnes & Noble, as one does, I was perusing the aisles, and I came to the Virginia Woolf section. I think I was looking for her diary, like her writer's diary, because I've heard that's very interesting, talking about her writing process and just being an author, and I was also looking for A Room of One's Own, because I really want to read that as well. Neither of them were there, so I was looking through her other books, picked this one up, and I read the back, and I was so intrigued by this idea of two women in London whose lives are overlapping and who are very different, and how their lives intersect in a lot of ways. And I know this book, according to the back, has invited comparison to Shakespeare, Mozart, and Jane Austen. And if anyone can make a comparison to Jane Austen and be halfway successful at it, I'm going to enjoy the book. My second to last classic that I want to read in 2020 is Eastland by Ellen Wood, who was known as Mrs. Henry Wood to her readers. This book was published in the 19th century. It is a classic Victorian sensation novel. It is about a woman named Lady Isabel. She runs away from her lawyer husband with this scoundrel and goes to the continent, as one does, has his illegitimate child, and when she finds out he never intended to actually marry her, she returns to England and takes up the post as governess in her husband's house with his new wife. I've actually started reading this book. I'm about 20% into it. I'm loving it so far. I think I've hit a little bit of a lull in it right now, so I set it down for the new year, and I'm going to pick this up again very soon. Another classic that I want to read this year, I actually don't have my copy with me because I'm at school, and I just decided not to bring it with me. because it scares me. It is The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Ignore my horrible Russian pronunciation. Whew, this book scares me. I've had this book on my shelf for 2 years and I picked it up once. I read the first chapter in December, just testing it out. I'd finished a book and I wanted to see if I wanted it to be my next read, and I got scared. And I got scared by the length because it's so long. It was really good, I liked it, and I know a lot of people love Dostoevsky, and so I really want to try it. I feel like I can't try to add Russian literature into my classic readings without at least reading one Tolstoy or one Dostoevsky book. So I'm choosing Dostoevsky. I'm reading it or else. You know, it's like that for me this year. Read it or else. Dare I say, read it and weep. I loved that movie. And then my last classic that I want to read is actually not a specific classic. I wanted to ask you guys for recommendations if you have them, but I want to read a Dickens book. I've never read a Dickens book because I'm scared that I won't like it, because I know it can be you either love Charles Dickens or you hate Charles Dickens, and I'm on the train where I really want to love Charles Dickens, but I haven't read any Charles Dickens. So if you guys have any suggestions for good, like, beginning Dickens books, please comment them down below. I have copies of Great Expectations and A Tale of Two Cities. I really don't know if that's the best place to start or not. Let me know. But I want to read a Dickens book. I will read a Dickens book. I'm scared of Dickens books. I was at the Barnes & Noble the other day and I almost picked up Bleak House, but it was really thick and I was really intimidated by it, and I had to put it back and pick up something else. Those are the classics that I want to read in 2020. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and please comment down below if you're gonna be reading any classics or participating in Lucy the Reader's Classics Community book challenge this year. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope you have a great day.